Hello, everyone. My name is Akash, and with me I have my co-host Joel.
Yeah.
And today is a very special episode on our 3 p.m. podcast. It marks the 10th episode, and it's been a hell of a ride. We've spoken to amazing product leaders, and amazing experiences have been shared on this podcast. And how how could we celebrate this better by uh, I mean, by calling our one and only professor to be on our show for the 10th special episode. So without much ado, Joel, let's invite
Yeah. I'm very
Professor
excited.
JJ. Hello, JJ. Hi.
Hello, Akash. Hello,
Yeah.
Joel. It's great to be
Hi.
here with you.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Yes, it's
Uh,
my pleasure. I'm excited for the conversation.
a very funny thing about how I first got to know about our professor and author, speaker. She has a lot of roles in the community. She does a lot of things, but my personal experience has been in the beginning watching her podcast. She has her own uh, a product voices podcast, which has now reached 100 episodes. So I mean, congratulations, firstly, on that.
Thank you.
That's a huge milestone, and we're just like 1/10 of where you've reached.
Yeah.
You'll be there. You'll be there soon. It is a big milestone. I'm thankful for the guests that I have on Product Voices to get me to 100.
I mean, that has been an inspiration for us to
hmm
take this forward, and that's how watching your podcast, I always manifested that one day I will probably interview the great one and only JJ Rorie. But that has finally manifested, I guess. And this is going to be really special, and thank you so much again. This is amazing that you're on our show. Uh, so, for the audience, if you don't mind, I want you to please give an introduction about yourself for all the people who are new to our podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So, gosh, I've been in product now for, I hate to say the number, probably close to 20 years now, which is crazy. And we can talk a little bit more about how I got into it in a little while if you want to. But I didn't start my career in product. That wasn't really a thing when I was, coming out of university. And there aren't many people that knew about product the same way that we do now. It was a function, it was a role, but you didn't know about it early in your career. So most people started in some other field, and myself started in marketing and sales. I don't have an engineering degree, which I always kind of find funny teaching at Johns Hopkins, one of the best engineering schools in the world. I have a business management degree and an MBA, and I started in kind of marketing coordinator, marketing manager roles. And kind of found my way into product and loved it from really the beginning. And so I was a product manager. I was a product leader, head of product for many years. Over the last 4 or 5 years, I've been teaching part-time at Johns Hopkins, which I absolutely love. And I also have a consulting and advisory firm that works with corporate product teams and kind of helping develop the talent that's already in product roles and get better at the role. As you mentioned, I have a book called Immutable: The 5 Truths of Great Product Managers. That was fun to write. And I host Product Voices, which is probably one of my favorite things to do because I get to learn from people, on every episode. So people will join from all over the world and in different roles and share their wisdom about product management.
I mean, I myself know how much knowledge I've imbibed through your book, and thank you so much for writing such an amazing book. Firstly, uh,
Thank you.
second, basically, our show is basically about helping aspiring product managers get into the product domain. As you know, right now, product management is being open to new people who are freshers or people who have 1 to 2 years of experience. They are being able to enter this domain. Maybe there's a phase shift or not. I want to ask you this question. Like, what do you think is the trend right now when it comes to product managers entering the industry?
It's actually a trend on its own that there's even the opportunity to be in product from the beginning of one's career, or at least fairly early, right out of university. And I say that meaning, again, just to kind of allude back to what I said, most people in the role today, or most people who've been in the role a few years, they didn't start in product management. I did a little informal research within the last year, and about 95% of people in product management today, in product roles today, did not start in product management. They came to product management through some other role. So that's a huge majority of people who are in product today started somewhere else, engineering, marketing, whatever it was. And if you dig a little deeper into that, almost 75% or something like that were in other roles for 4 years before they got into product. And almost half, some 45% of people in product were in other roles for almost 7 years, right? I think the average age of a product manager is like 33, 34, 35. So the fact that it is now a possibility, even though it's still growing and small, possibility to get into product from the very beginning of your career, that itself is the trend, right? Like that's a new thing over the last 5-10 years, let's say at absolute most. Again, when I was starting, product management existed, but people didn't learn about it in university. That we didn't aspire to be product managers because it wasn't so visible. And so just the fact that there are universities teaching it, more people aware of it, and more companies, still not enough, but more and more companies willing to hire people fresh out of university, or at least really early in their career. That's the trend. Now, if you dig into that trend a little bit, it's still hard, right? It's still difficult to get that because there's more supply of folks who want to be early, been there, product managers early in their career than there is the roles that are available out there. And there's still too many companies, in my opinion, that are risk averse about that, right? We're still kind of trapped in the old system of, we'll bring people in through other pipelines. We will only hire on experience. Like, you have to have done this before I hire you. Well, that's the age old, how do I get experience if nobody will give me the experience, right? And so I think while the trend has started, and the company, there's companies now hiring junior talent and newer talent for product, the system is still in place to make it hard. Right. And so that's what I think a lot of aspiring product managers are coming up against, is that, there's a lot of people who want the job and there just aren't enough jobs. And there are too many companies expecting you to have experience before you get the job. Right. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see over the next few years how the corporate world changes, and or some kind of pipeline, process or system that takes aspiring product managers and gets them ready in a year or two through adjacent roles or through programs or something like that, that helps them get the experience they need and helps the corporate world feel comfortable with that. That's kind of what I'm seeing.
So there is a path going towards getting newcomers opportunity. So, well, as you have been experienced with so many students and the companies, so based on your like research and experiences, like what are some of the common traits or the skills that a newcomer might have to break into the product management? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm answering this very specifically about breaking into
Hmm.
product management, right? Like, I think and it's not that the way I answer this isn't also relevant for people who have experience, but I think breaking into it is the key here, because there are a lot of skills that a product manager needs, right? It's a very well balanced and diverse
Hmm.
skill set that a product manager ends up needing and developing over his or her career or their career. But to get into it, you by definition, almost, you don't have all of those skills, right? You just haven't had the chance to develop,
Right.
everything that you would need to know knowledge and skill wise. So I think the things that help candidates stand out, that help hiring managers kind of in their mind de-risk the candidate, right? Because again, we're still in this mindset for the most part of, if they haven't done this job before, I'm taking a chance and I'm risking my reputation and the fact that this person may not be good. And there's a couple of things that I have found. I've hired a lot of product people in my career, and there's a couple of things that stand out, right? Everybody for the most part looks the same on paper, and I don't mean that flippantly, but I mean everybody has the classes and the skills and the whatever, right? Like at the end of the day, we kind of all look the same on paper. So when you're talking to, a hiring manager, or you're interviewing, what comes across as different and harder to kind of convey are two skills that I look for. And I don't even know if they're skills, but they're traits maybe. Curiosity and communication, right? And so again, without any other classes you've taken, trainings you've done, skills you have, if you come across as someone who can communicate well, like, so you can process the questions they're asking you, you can connect it fairly quickly to things you've done, you can succinctly answer those questions and then wait for follow-up, as opposed to trying to get everything out right away, right? We tend to try to tell them everything there is to know about us, but we have to be kind of, throttle that back and communicate in very succinct, very clear ways, very specific to what they asked. And then also, connect the dots, if you will, like kind of understand what they're really asking for, right? That's hard, but those folks that communicate well will stand out first and foremost, right? And then that other thing is curiosity. And I literally have hired people based on the questions they asked me because they were so good, right? And I knew that what that meant was that they could see the big picture. They could think about things that could go wrong and could go right. Some of the byproducts of asking really good questions is that you can see the landscape well. And that's a good trait, right? And so, natural curiosity, some of us just, want to know how the world works and we just want to ask 1,000 questions. But it also comes down to like asking about what, the problems you're solving for customers, and why is the company going in that direction, and how does the company balance these things, and, kind of doing some research and knowing about the industry trends and saying, how is the company thinking about AI in this way, or whatever it is, right? Just showing that you've not just done the kind of traditional research on the company, but that you're naturally curious about how things work and how they're going to better serve their customers and the competition, right? So those two things. When you go in and you have no product experience, you can still stand out by being a good communicator, and then just asking really good questions, like just being naturally curious about how their products work, how their company works, how their customers value and benefit from their services and products.
Yeah. So when we usually think about skills, we go directly towards the hard skills. But yeah, communication and curiosity is something that stands out. So similarly, could you share some examples where individuals broke into the product role through unconventional ways, like which won't be a traditional way in which people are going through the interview, but how did they stand out in the meetings or the interviews and they cracked the job?
Yeah, so a couple of ways. Well, first of all, I mean, kind of the traditional path, and again, this isn't necessarily for folks in university kind of start their career here, but I know people that have been nurses who have become product managers, who've been in finance and operations, who've been teachers, so there's all kinds of paths into product management. I want people to realize that even if product isn't your first job, like there can be some product adjacent roles that you can then move into, but we'll dig into that in a little while if you want to. But I think when you think about how to stand out and how to move from non-traditional, if you will, and again, non-traditional for aspiring product managers, for university students, for folks who are kind of new in their careers, pretty much everything can be non-traditional, right? I mean, anything that's not, I've been a product manager and I'm applying for this
Right.
product manager role is in some ways non-traditional. And so I think there are two things that you have to do and that I've seen people successfully do. One is hit it head on, like don't
Mm-hmm.
try to pretend like you have all of this experience or talk like
Okay.
you have all this experience, right? I mean, it's okay that you're
Mm-hmm.
green in certain ways and that you're new in certain ways, but hit it head on and connect the dots for the person you're interviewing with. So for example, you know, say, I actually didn't have a product internship.
Okay.
And I'm sure some of your applicants actually did do some product
Right.
internships. And while it would have been great to do that, the truth is I actually developed these skills through these other ways. And I did some case studies and I did some pro bono
Yes.
projects and I developed these skills almost on my own in some ways because I knew
Mm-hmm.
how important it was for a product role. And so again, just really specifically before they even ask about or kind of dig into what you don't have,
Mm-hmm.
kind of hit it head on and take control of it, if that makes sense,
Right.
right? And so,
Right.
like say, like I have these skills, they just didn't come through what a traditional product internship
Mm-hmm.
or a
Mm-hmm.
traditional thing on paper, whatever. And I think that shows initiative. I think that helps you stand out from everyone else who even if they've done a product internship, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, whatever kind of experience it is. I think the other thing is, you've got to show how you think differently. This is not
Mm-hmm.
easy. So it's not like there's this silver bullet that anyone can give you, myself or anyone else, that says if you do this, you will get this job. But things like um, I've seen video, like just a really short video of not just who I am, and this is not a video CV, basically, right?
Yeah, right.
Or a visual CV, but really taking kind of their job description or their product, and making kind of your own case study out of it, saying, hey, I took it upon myself. I've used your product for a long time. I took it
Mm-hmm.
upon myself to talk to some of my friends and my coworkers or whatever, my co-students, about it. We've all used it. Here's some ideas that I came up with, right? They didn't
Yeah.
ask for you to do this, but that kind of shows some initiative and helps you stand out.
Right.
Doesn't guarantee you get the job, doesn't, any of that,
Mm-hmm.
but there's just so few ways to really truly stand out and from coming from a non-traditional, I've been a product manager
Mhm.
already, so hire me,
Yes.
way, that it's, you just kind of have to do some things that'll make you stand out, but
Mhm.
not like just fluff things, right? Not just
Mm-hmm.
things that won't actually show that you have the mindset, show that you have the skills. So just things like that I've kind of seen some people do that it at least got some attention, right?
Right.
I mean, I think you put it very well, JJ. Like I think from the very beginning you've been explaining very well the strategies, and for the audience, I wanted to reiterate how important this is while you're like having an interview, like asking good questions, pretending. I mean, not pretending you have the experience, and like the way we normally do it in our interviews is like totally opposite. I feel like most of us don't even think about the questions first of all before going into an interview. uh, like most of us just make up experiences, we just put it on the CV, and then we just make up stuff to tell them. But how you the way you told it, the way you said that, use your adjacent experiences, be
Mm-hmm.
candid, be honest, and use, if you are in a marketing role or if you are in a customer facing role, use that experience and tie it back to the product role. I mean, that's what I understood from what you said. Like it's like the skills you can show it in different ways. And finally, you did explain that it's better to always research about their product and figure out what is the trends and the current industry, how they perceive the product. And
Yeah.
uh, this is a good segue into what I want to ask next. Like, so you said if you don't have experiences, use adjacent experiences. What if you don't have those adjacent experiences? What if you're just like a fresher out of college? Or
Mm-hmm.
how much do you think side projects or like entrepreneurial experiences make sense? Like right now, if I'm in college right now, how much should I add to my resume, and how much does it help in standing out to hiring managers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very important, and the reason is product is a. This is also one of the reason why some companies are still hesitant to hire, brand new
Mm-hmm.
people, because it is a role that takes some level of understanding a bit business acumen and understanding of markets, some business maturity, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one who believes that we can build that as we build.
Mm-hmm.
Someone coming in. I think the fresh perspectives, the eagerness, the passion of someone new outweighs the learning curve in
Correct.
other areas, and I think more and more companies will see that. But the real world of today is that there's still a lot of that bias out there, right or wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think some of those side projects, school projects, even like class projects, anything you do from an entrepreneurial perspective, I think those are important because they show some practical application of
Mm-hmm.
product management, right? Even taking
Mm-hmm.
a class in product management is still it's still not doing the job, right?
True.
And so anything that you can do from, like at Hopkins, we've got the product management club, which is amazing. And there's pro bono projects that are worked on throughout the semester. In our product management class, we do projects. There are other classes that I'm sure folks do,
Mm-hmm.
team-based projects on. Um, some of those can be good vehicles to show what you've done. Because again, think about product management. It's about cross-functional, stakeholder management and making sure that various people from various roles are on the same page. And it's about communicating. It's about managing your time in a
Mm-hmm.
project and seeing the big picture, problem solving, all these things, right? A
Mm-hmm.
lot of different projects in school can actually help you with those things. So then it's just a matter of connecting those dots. The side projects, whether it's something through a school or on your own, um, is is great. It's good on paper. It gives you the chance to talk about what you did and some of the things that you learned from it, the things that you didn't realize you were going to run up against, and then what did you do about it, right? Like knocking
Mm-hmm.
down hurdles and all of those kinds of problems that we see in the real
Mm-hmm.
world of product. Those can come up in side projects, and that can give you the ability to talk about them, right? And how you handled them.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that side projects and kind of even starting your own company, if it's like a
Mm-hmm.
one person show,
Mm-hmm.
the one thing it doesn't really give you, like that is true real world product management, is that ongoing stakeholder management, right? Like, 10 people that you've got to please at all times because they all have their own incentives, they all have their own perspectives, and we're working together after seemingly the same goal, but there's all these different personalities
Yes.
you've got to manage. And it's
Yeah.
hard. It's one of the
Yeah.
hardest things about being a product manager. And you don't really have that as much in side projects, but you do have teammates most
Mm-hmm.
often.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of connect those things, right? Like talk about how it was hard to get 5 different people from 5 different, you know, um, degree programs thinking about it the same way, whatever it is, right? Like just kind of think about how you can tie those side projects
Mm-hmm.
to what a product manager would do. And that I think can help you stand out.
Yeah.
If you don't have the opportunity to do those side projects through
Mm-hmm.
school, through a student club or what have you, just do it, right? Like grab some of your friends that you're going through school with and just do something on your own. Whether it's you don't have to build your own company, but you can do something to kind of showcase some of those skills and learn some of those skills. I think it looks good on paper, and then when you're talking to
Mm-hmm.
hiring managers.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And as you said, it is important to have like side projects, and the way you portray it is important as well in interviews. Uh, so I wanted to talk about the next question is like basically, have you ever been on the other side, like going through a lot? As you said, there are hundreds of resumes, like you need to filter through them. Uh, what on a resume do you really think is a very important aspect? Like, what do you think is the highlight? How can you like improve your resume is what I'm trying to get at. Like,
Yeah. So
yeah.
and I have again hired a lot, and I think more today, and of course I use computer systems. I'm not that old. When I was hired for my teams, but they're just getting more and more sophisticated, right? And so applications go through this first filter before a human ever sees it. And so as such, you do need kind of keywords and kind of the language you use on your resume is important. And the way I look at it, and through some of the hiring managers and recruiters I've talked to, it's not anything outside, like out of bounds, if you will, like random weird stuff. It's just product terminology, right? And so usually what happens is a product leader, director of product, whatever, has an opening. They go talk to a recruiter in their company. The recruiter says, "What's the job description?" They work on that. What are the keywords you want me to look for in the first pass? And they'll say whatever they'll say, right? They'll say execution. They'll say customer discovery. They'll whatever those kind of keywords are. It usually is things like customer discovery, user stories and backlogs, all the stuff, right? Like you can't. And so then that first pass needs to say some of that. Now, I personally hate that because I think it just takes completely out of, it takes it out of context, right? It takes the human out of that resume. But that is part of the real world that we live in. And so your resume itself needs to use product terminology. So I worked with a lot of students on their CVs and just give them some, advice here and there. And so things like they'll say, we did market research. Great term, fine. Maybe that's what you did. But you also could say market and customer research, right? Like literally just adding a few terms in there. Enhanced our customer intelligence or did some customer discovery interviews. Something like that, as opposed to just research. Because first the first pass can pick up on some of that, right? Also, if you were like in your projects, or you were in a student club, or even an internship, a lot of times you don't have real titles in those things. And so if you're not fabricating something, why not call yourself an associate product manager, on that project or what have you, right? I mean, so again, there's the right way to do it, but if you can do that, that's kind of the first pass of making sure that you're going to get through the application system. And then it comes down to the rules that everybody's heard a million times. Make sure that you're showing results if you have them, right? The impact of your work, not just what you did. I think in most of your cases where you're new in your career, your school does matter, right? Your education does matter. So maybe that's at the top. For someone like me, it's way at the bottom because nobody cares about that, right? That I went to school 100 years ago. But, and it's all about what I've done. You might, Johns Hopkins, for example, is a great school. And so you might want that at the top. And you might want to show some of the classes or projects that you've done. And then your experience, skills, like especially technical skills, way at the bottom, honestly. Hiring managers, if it's there, that's great. They almost assume that you're going to have some of that stuff, and they're not going to hire you based on it. They're going to hire you based on other stuff, and they'll teach you that if they need it. You can put it on there, but put it at the bottom. Don't try. I know there's like the 1-page rule. For most of you all, that's probably fine. I haven't had a 1-page resume in years because, at a certain point, you just have too much to put and cram in one page. So It's okay if you go to 2 pages if the story tells itself, right? And you have enough room for that. Frankly, I think highlighting companies, highlighting what you've done for them is really important. I'm a big fan of a little blurb right under your kind of company and title as what problem you solve for customers. right? Like, tell
Oh.
me right up front. Like, I don't care that you did, 10, whatever, did data
Mm-hmm.
analysis for, 10 months or what have you. I want to know what problem you solve for your customers and
Right.
what kind of benefit and value they got. Like,
Mhm.
just a little one sentence blurb is sometimes something to help you stand
Mm-hmm.
out.
So, yeah.
So, like moving on from the resume, apart from the resume, there are also things like we could do. So, how important do you think is personal branding for a PM? Like, how can, and if it is important, so how could we build one effectively so that we can be out there?
Yeah, here's the thing. It's kind of a weird way to answer this because
Mm-hmm.
or it's a weird conundrum maybe here. Personal branding can be really powerful, and so
Correct.
in and part of me recommends it. Yes, absolutely, focus on it. But the thing is, it's hard. It's difficult to get a real personal brand. It takes time. It takes
Mm-hmm.
commitment. It takes consistency.
Mhm.
But start small, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
literally just have a LinkedIn profile if you don't
Mhm.
already.
Right.
Have some social, have some presence on social.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously most of us do for a personal perspective, but from a business kind of professional
Right.
perspective, and you don't have to delineate those two too much. I mean, you do want to keep
Mm-hmm.
keep it professional, but you also want to be genuine, right? You
Right.
want people to see you. And
Mm-hmm.
we today, my personal and my professional, they blend, right? They just do. And so most people who know me know that I'm a professor and they know about my cats, right? They know I'm a crazy cat lady. And so you got to be genuine. You got to be true to yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
new people, I love it. I mean, I'm a big fan of people who start to try to build their brand, but it's hard to do. So be
Right.
consistent and have the right expectations, right? Like for example, so, yeah, I would, if I were in your shoes now, I would um maybe start like a series like this. I love that you've done this podcast. Maybe something like taking people along the ride of your journey to product
Mm-hmm.
management career, right? Show all the good, show all the bads, show the times when you didn't get the interview request,
Mhm.
whatever it is, right? And
Mm-hmm.
kind of help people feel like they're part of that community, and in that
Yes.
way you're actually building your own brand, but you're building it in kind of a genuine way.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
folks out there that are trying to be thought leaders, um and I even struggle with this, right? Like I'm a thought leader, but it's like who it has to be me. It has to be my voice. It
Right.
has to be genuine and real, in that way. And I can't pretend to be something I'm not. And so personal
Yes.
branding is important. I think you should be out there, in
Mm-hmm.
whatever way you feel comfortable, because I think hiring managers can see that in a way that
Right.
they can see your personality in that more than they could on a piece of paper with your CV,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mhm.
So I think that's great. It's kind of like a portfolio
Mhm.
or whatever, just it's almost like your personal portfolio, showing your work and
Right.
showing your journey along the way. So I'm a big fan of it. Just to have the right expectations, know that it's not going to happen overnight, know that it's
Yes.
something difficult to
Mm-hmm.
do and takes a lot of time and effort. But it's not rocket science, right? You just have to be consistent, find your
Right.
voice, find what you want to
Mm-hmm.
be, who you are, and kind of put yourself out there.
Mhm. Um, so, I mean, this was perfect. I really loved the fact that you explained about personal branding, its advantages and its disadvantages, and how it's like better to know the vices as well.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to talk more about this. Like for the next few months, I think a lot of us will be looking for internships. A lot of us will be looking for jobs. This is like a very critical stage in our career. Like the next 10-15 days might make or break a lot of people. Like it's like this point for the next 1 or 2 months, like for all the viewers, like all the students who are watching this, what would you think they should probably work on, first things first? Like what do you think, like do you think personal branding should be their focus? Do you think they should network a lot on LinkedIn? Do you think Slack channels should be their game? What do you think? Where are these hiring managers sitting? How do you think they can like tap into these resources very quickly?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think, I think you some of these you do in parallel, right? I think that
Mm-hmm.
you first and foremost start to um, have a vision for yourself and where you would like to go, right? And so, in other words, being a product manager is like the ultimate goal, but what does that actually mean to you, right? Being a product manager for what industries pique your interest, what types of companies pique your interest. And I understand that it's easy to say anyone who'll give me a job is what I want, right? I get it, and that's okay. You actually, and it's perfectly fine to just take that. It's like I have startup companies and I'm like, this is our target customer, but if anybody wants to buy
Mm-hmm.
from, sell to them too. So I get that, but I still want you to have kind of a vision of, in an ideal
Right.
state, I would be in this industry because of these traits that I have and traits that I
Mm-hmm.
want to, this passion that I have, what have you. I also want you to open your horizons a little bit to adjacent roles, product
Mhm.
adjacent roles, right? So business analyst, product owner, marketing manager, engineer, developer, because still to this day, and it will change and it will continue to be different, but still today, a majority of people in product will have started somewhere else, right? So if you have to
Right.
be an engineer or developer for a year to get over into product, then open your mind up to that. But do it in an intentional way. Like know
Mhm.
that it's adjacent to a product. You're working on a product. You're working with a
Mm-hmm.
customer base. You're learning along the way, so it's an easier internal transfer, right? I think that's kind of your strategy, job search strategy and vision. Then your tactics are, yes, personal branding, but do it in conjunction with like networking, right? Like just kind of start in parallel to join some communities, join some virtual communities, go to a local meetup if there's one in person or virtual, right? That's where your hiring managers are. They're in the product community, right? They're actually going to these events over the next. I know it's the holiday season, kind of the end of the year and then first of the year, but they're going to start early in January to go back to these events, and you can be part of the community, and they'll see your name. You can, go to a meetup that's virtual, right? Doesn't even have to be
Mm-hmm.
person. You see that someone was there from so and so company. Even if you don't get to meet them, you can send a LinkedIn message after the fact and say, "Hey, we were both at this meetup
Right.
last week, and I am at Johns Hopkins or I'm at whatever university, and I'm graduating in a year, and I would love to be in product. Would love to kind of pick your brain on some strategies of how to
Mm-hmm.
get into product management." You do that 10 times, maybe two or three of people will respond back, and you get some networking contacts, right?
Mhm.
Doesn't mean an automatic job, but it means that you're doing these things to kind of connect with people, right? So I think networking, I think a little bit of personal branding, I think
Mm-hmm.
having that vision. And then at the end of the day, it's also a numbers game. So anything that
True.
you see that you like, apply to it. Do the research to apply in your best, put your best foot forward, but apply to it, get out there, see what's happening, see if you know anyone at that company that you could get an introduction into. I think all of those are tactics that I think will kind of help people over these next
Mm-hmm.
couple of months as they're really kind of putting the pedal to the metal, trying to find internships and jobs.
Right.
I mean, that was a big eye, opener for me. It was like, okay, let's take a step back and like look at the vision first. Let's just like
Mm-hmm.
let's just like figure out like what do you exactly want to do, like, and then go from there. And
I think,
I
and just to add to that, sorry to interrupt, but just to add to that, the reason why, and again, it doesn't mean you're going to say no to someone. Like somebody says, I want to give you this job, but no, it doesn't fit
yeah.
into my vision. Exactly. You're not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does is it gives you more, it helps you tell your story better, right? It
Mhm.
gives you more practice on this is what I'm good at. This is what I want to do. Because again, people, hiring managers realize that you're early in your career. They realize that you may not know everything. They realize that you may not even know where you want to be 5 years from now. That's okay. They want to know about you, right? They want to know about you and your passion for learning and all of that. And so it's perfectly fine to say, you don't have to say to every single company, this is my absolute dream job, right? If it's not
Right.
true, just kind of go, you don't want to say, I don't really want to be here either,
Mm-hmm.
but you do want to go in with say, I've always been interested in XYZ. And that's why I think this role would be kind of interesting for
Right.
me. So it just helped them. The more you understand your vision for, let's say, the first 5 years of your career, because nobody knows
Mm-hmm.
what's going to happen after that, then the better you're able to tell that story about yourself.
Makes sense. Right. I think going from there, I think we can, like, a person who has, like, right now he's done all these things, and now he has finally landed that one special interview which he wanted with his dream company. Now, when he's preparing for his interview, so
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of frameworks right now. There are a lot of, like, resources like Exponent, where they teach a lot of things about product. I wanted to dig a little bit into this, like, how much of these frameworks and how much of these exercises do you think actually matter in the interview, and how have you seen candidates handle these exercises or frameworks?
So frameworks in product management, I guess generally in business, but definitely in product management, like frameworks and models that we all use. And we love our frameworks and models in product management. There's like a million of them. But it's important to remember that they're only there to help us get to a certain point. They're there to help us make a decision. They're there to help us analyze something, right? That they're a tool. They're not the outcome. And so it's like the hammer, not the house we're trying to build, right? The house we're trying to build is the decision we come to, or, whatever it is. And so, all these frameworks, especially in newer people who don't have a ton of product experience, they think the framework is the end all be all, right? And it's really not. It's what comes out of the framework. It's important it's almost like showing your work, right? Like in elementary school or what have you. It's like, okay, you came with the right answer, but show me how you actually got there. And the truth is, a lot of times in the real world, we don't really care how you got there, that you got to the right answer. In interviews, they do care a little bit more because they want to make sure that, your mind works that way. So it's important, but it's important. Frameworks are important, but they're important only to show that their utility, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when to use a certain framework when, right? At a certain point. So, for example, if someone asked you a question in an interview about, you've got this new idea for a potential solution, and it's your job as a product manager to get people on board internally for this, how would you do that? Right. And so that's kind of an interview question that you might get. You could say something like, and this is one of my favorite frameworks, you could say something like, well, there's a framework called working backwards, sometimes called the Amazon press release, and what I like in that framework is that you can start with the end result in mind. You can start with the value that the customer gets in mind before you ever get to any kind of product feature or the details of anything. And that sometimes helps internal people understand the overall vision. It helps people understand where we as a company would want to go and why customers would care in the first place, right? What we often do in product is start with the minutia, start with the details, start with the features. Let's start building right away. And then, oh, by the way, 4 months later, we start to think about how are we going to tell the customer the story. This way you do it differently, like kind of the working backwards model is a good way to do that. So the frameworks are important only when you can show that you know when to use them, right? You know how to, what their purpose is, right? And so sometimes a really complicated framework isn't really needed. And sometimes you've got a situation where it is complex, and you need to kind of walk through step by step by step, right? So, I mean, again, some of my favorite frameworks or exercises that students and aspiring product managers can do are things as simple as like a product canvas, right? A product canvas is, I think Roman Pichler is the kind of original inventor of that, and now it's really common. And it's just a one pager about your a product, but it tells the internal group about the goals of it, the big picture of it, the customer we're targeting, something about the product, right? So if you were asked questions about how to make sure everybody's aligned on, what we're building, things like that, you could bring up, right? And say, yeah, this is a good tool. It's easy. It's simple. If it's some complex, like how do I solve a problem, you might want to use something, I don't know, like Circles method, right? Which kind of helps you. And again, I'm happy to share all of this if you want to, have links or whatever. But Circles method is just kind of walking through a way to solve some problems and make sure you're looking at each step along the way. So really, to answer your question, I think frameworks are important. I think speaking the language of product is important. And so kind of that base knowledge of what these frameworks are and what purpose they serve is important. I don't know that it ever makes or breaks an interview unless you try to force the conversation into all about frameworks and not about how you use that to make better decisions. So I think that's my advice is, frameworks are just that. They're just tools to help us think better and to bring data together and to help, look at a problem through a certain lens and then ultimately get kind of, the result that we're looking for.
Very quickly, I wanted to ask a follow-up on this. I think you have been the judge on the hackathon, PM hackathon, and it was great hosting you as well. Thank you for coming, firstly. And I wanted to ask about the teams that actually presented in the hackathon. What do you think are the biggest mistakes that they made? If you remember anything, like you can just think about it, or like if there's anything that comes at the top of your mind, like something that they messed up or like they did well when they were presenting that you really liked about the presentations.
Yeah, and that's actually a really great exercise, whether you go through a full hackathon or just use kind of the result of it as an exercise. It's a good way to practice a really important skill in product management, which is succinctly communicating complex issues, right? And so in this hackathon, they had a full day to go through this problem, and then we gave them like 3 minutes or something to communicate it. That's nothing, right? That's really, really difficult to do. And so if you think about what they needed to communicate, which is what the problem is, right? But they don't need to spend a lot of time reiterating the problem because the people in the room knew that. That's where some people got in trouble, is that they spent too much time just rehashing things that were already known. They need to start to tell, okay, this is the problem that it's creating for that particular customer, and we're going to go after that particular very specific issue through this solution, right? And through this solution, we're going to get this result, and this customer is going to be happy and have this experience. That's what you have to tell in 3 minutes or 5 minutes, right? Not the details of your product, right? Not the features and functionality, not the technology under the hood. It really is all about the problem you're solving and how you're going to do it differently. So of course there's some solution there that you have to talk about, but not into the minute details. And I think that's where people in general get in trouble when they're communicating things to internal stakeholders. They go at it from the wrong level, right? They're not understanding that particular audience person's, perspective and what level of detail they need. And so I think succinctly communicating a complex issue in just a little bit of time is really hard. And so that exercise of doing something like that, taking a problem or taking a solution and making a presentation that can be done in 3 minutes, that's a great exercise to do. And again, it comes down to, can you bring me in as an audience, right? Like, don't lose me in that first minute by just rehashing something I already know, right? Talk to me about the person or the customer or whatever. Talk to me about the problem. Talk to me about how you're going to solve it. Tell me about it from their perspective, right? The customer's perspective. And then kind of wrap it all up with the, painting me this picture of how the life is
hmm
going to be better once they use that solution.
Like diverting back to the book you wrote, so the five truths, so which of them do you think is the hardest to master, and particularly like why is it so hard?
Oh yeah, I love that question. So, just very briefly, the five truths, and it's actually really interesting. We mentioned how a lot of the thought process behind what we should do or be is the hard skills. And
hmm
my vision behind the book, when I started researching it and wanting to do it, was what is it about those folks that succeed in product management? I've been around a lot of really successful people in product management and across lots of different industries and building lots of very different products from each other, but they all seem to navigate the role really well. And I wanted to figure out what was that skill set that they all had in common, if there was one. My hypothesis was that there was some common
hmm
skill set. And through my research, I found these five truths, as I call them. And it's customer intelligence, just really, really knowing your customer well. It's being a master communicator. It's being very good at building relationships. It's fourth, being kind of having really good judgment. And then fifth is you prioritize your time well, right? So of those things, I think the most difficult that I've seen people deal with, it's actually probably a tie, which is relationship building. And again, it doesn't on its surface sound like the hardest thing, but when
hmm
you really get, 5 or 10 people that you work with every day that have different backgrounds, that have different
Right.
perspectives, different personalities, different incentives that they're being held to, there can be some conflict. And as a product manager, it's your job to kind of be the glue and be the orchestrator of, of moving things along, and not necessarily always tactically, but just kind of the
hmm
vision and making sure people are on board. And it's not always easy to build successful, healthy relationships with everyone. So I think that's actually, one of the hardest, because you constantly have to cultivate. You constantly have to work on
Yes.
it. It's not like you build it, you're done, you never have to think about it again. I'd say the other one that's
True.
probably tied for the most difficult is judgment.
hmm
And I think the reason is, number one, I think people are I think of judgment and decision making are not the exact same thing, but I kind of lump them together in this. And as product people, we make decisions every day, big, small. We're constantly being asked to make decisions. And the further we go up the chain of demand, right, or command, you make bigger decisions, right?
hmm
But even the earliest product manager is making decisions for our product. And so, being able to display or have good judgment means being able to know what data you need, being able to sort through the noise, being able to tell some stakeholders that no, I don't need that information right now. Knowing how risky the decision is and what kind of the risk, the risk
Right.
profile is, and knowing how much due diligence you have to have. Also being comfortable with the fact that we very rarely have all the perfect data, right? Or very
hmm
rarely
True.
have like a absolutely this is the way to go. Like there's always ambiguity that we're dealing with. That's hard. That's very
Yes.
difficult. It takes a level of maturity, it takes a level of confidence, it takes a level of acumen of being able to do that. So I think judgment is hard for people. I think once
hmm
you get over a certain hump, then you're okay. But I think judgment is probably tied for the hardest with relationship. They're all
Right.
important. None of them are like none of them are rocket science. I always say, like,
hmm
it's not like I'm telling you have to develop this skill that no one's ever heard of, but it's not that easy to do because we constantly have to put attention to it. So I think
Right.
relationship building and judgment are probably the two most difficult, or at least most intimidating to people.
True. True. That was very like insightful. So before going into the final questions, like, Akash, do you want to ask anything from your side? Oh, you're on mute, I guess.
So sorry about that. So I mean, I had a small follow up, and it's a little funny because I wanted to make it very specific to our audience. What do you think is like the most important truth in the book that you think aspiring product managers should learn first? It's a trick question, but yeah,
Yeah,
what do you
that's a
think?
good one. Honestly, I think that the one that's going to make the most impact for you right away is communication. I
Okay.
think I
Mm-hmm.
think you can work on relationship in your own world, but until you get in the context of a product team, the building relationships of a product team is different than anything else,
Right.
right? And customer intelligence you can research, but you're not going to build until you get there. Prioritizing your
Mm-hmm.
time, judgment, you need the actual there. I think you can work on and become better at communication right now, and I think that will start, or that will help you stand out, right? And so again, we talked about it when we talk about curiosity and communication. If you can succinctly tell stories, you can connect dots in your communication. I think you're going to stand out from other applicants. So I would, if you're going
Right.
to start with one, it doesn't mean you're brand new in any of these. You may be good at some of these things naturally, but I would try to perfect communication as much as possible now.
Mm-hmm. Now, like to close with this question, like if there's like just three pieces of advice that you would leave the new aspiring PMs or the audience today, so what would those three pieces of advice be?
Yeah. I think the first one would be, and I think I've touched on a little bit of each of these, or at least a couple of these. The first one would be to be a little bit more open. Have your vision, but be open, right? You may have
Mm-hmm.
to, and again, even if it feels like a concession, even if it feels like not what you wanted in the beginning, if you are an engineer or developer or marketer for the next year, and then you move into product management, that's still a really great scenario, right? That's still good. Doesn't mean to stop looking for product manager right away. Doesn't
Mhm.
mean that you don't do that, but just open up a little bit of your horizons to think that if there's a good path that you can be right around the product and then move in, that's okay too. I think that takes maybe some of the stress off as well.
Mm-hmm.
Again, keep looking for product, keep building all your skills that you want to, keep doing what you want to do, but maybe open it up just a little bit to say, okay, if I have to have a product adjacent for the first job out of
Mhm.
college, that's okay. um, I think second piece of advice would be to work on those skills that will be foundational to you when you get in product, and frankly will help other roles as well. Communication's a big one. Think about,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you can't build relationship building in the same way that you would once you're in a product team, but every time you have a school project or a class project and you've got to work with four other people, just kind of think about what
Right.
that looks like, and the logistics and the communication, and showing them empathy and
Mm-hmm.
expectations and all the kind of stuff, right? Just kind of be intentional about all of the ways that you can learn now from all of the things that you're doing right now, right? Doesn't have to be being a product manager to learn some of the skills
Mhm.
to be a good product manager. So that's the second thing. And the last one is just like, give yourself grace. Honestly, this one's going to be hard, especially for, all of you who are just very ambitious and very, driven, but none of us had a career that went exactly like we expected it to, right? There are always curveballs. There are always good things that came out of nowhere, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
you're going to do what you're going to do over the next few months, over the next few years, whatever. But and be intentional and be ambitious and be driven, but give yourself grace and take an afternoon away and don't get completely burned out and stressful and or stressed. I know that's easier said than done, but
I guess everyone in around us is like every audience right now is like super stressed. So that's
yeah,
perfect.
they are, and I totally understand it, right? I was too, and it's natural, and you're just going to be, right? It is just naturally a stressful situation where you're trying to take the next step in your life, and you're not sure what that is. Like, that uncertainty is stressful, and so I get it, but give yourself grace, right? Whatever that looks
Mm-hmm.
like. It doesn't have to be. It's different for each person, right? It's knowing that you don't have to be perfect. It's knowing that, if your dream job isn't your first job, that's okay. It's very rarely is, right? Your first job is never your last job. So there's room for movement no matter what happens. I understand you're going to be stressed, but don't make yourself sick over it. Like, give yourself whatever you need to keep going and to, get the best out of the situation and this experience you're in.
I mean, wow, that comes full circle, and I really love how you put all the three tips together. And I think those are the main three things that we've been iterating throughout the episode, and
Hmm.
you've been explaining to the entire audience. And I think the audience would definitely take these away from you, and I think I would definitely like go back today and like rethink about whatever I learned today. Thank you so much again for coming on this podcast. I really hope that you hit 1,000 episodes one day, and I'll be there definitely, like rooting for you. And I mean, I'm super happy that you came on this podcast. So without much ado, I just want to say thank you to our audience as well. Thank you to my co-host Joel, and
Thanks.
uh, all the best, guys. Whoever is listening to the podcast, all the best for the next 2 months. It's going to be a rough ride, but we'll all get there eventually. So, as Professor JJ said, please give yourself grace. Uh, all right. So, with a bye bye. Thank you so much for coming. And
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
episode, we'll all see you on the next episode of
Mhm.
3 p.m. podcast. Keep listening, keep hustling, and all the best. Bye bye. See you.
Bye.
Thank you all. Bye. Happy New Year.